Hey, I'm John Latok. Welcome to the How to Sleep Better presentation. By the end of this, I hope you can take away some tricks and tools that you can use to get more sleep and also better quality of sleep. Now, we all know that when we get a good sleep, we feel better, we've got a bit more energy, but we're also going to talk about how it affects body composition as well. Obviously, most people are getting into health and fitness to feel better, get some more energy, but also to lose body fat, maybe put on some lean muscle. So we're going to talk about how all of these mechanisms work, why they're so important, and how you can make the most of them. So as you said, from a fat loss perspective, one of our main priorities is to maximize growth hormone, and growth hormone production helps with fat burning, it helps with muscle building. So if you're looking to improve your body composition, it should be pretty obvious that we need to maximize growth hormone. And we're not talking about bulking up and getting huge and all that kind of stuff. Growth hormone is a natural hormone, it's a natural compound within your body, and every single person on this planet needs it. And the more you have of it, the better, okay, to a certain point, provided it's not out of control. And growth hormone production occurs in the largest amounts when we hit deep sleep. So I said at the beginning, it's not just about getting to sleep and getting more sleep. We need to make sure that the sleep you're getting is of a high quality. You're getting into that, what we call the REM stage of sleep, which is that sort of really deep, dreamy stage, as opposed to being sort of just in the sleep and not far off being awake and drifting in and out, which again is what a lot of people do. Okay, so in terms of body composition, you are going to struggle to ever get the best results you can, or potentially get any results at all, if you're not prioritizing sleep, getting really good sleep. You might be trying hard in the gym and pushing yourself even though you're tired, and obviously that's commendable. You might be trying to diet and restrict calories and everything else. Again, well done. Again, it's commendable that you're putting in the effort. However, you can become very, very frustrated if you're not getting enough sleep. Okay, so it's not just about do more exercise, eat less calories. If you're not sleeping, your hormones are going to be all over the place, and you're going to struggle to see the results that you deserve. So just to give you a little bit of science and talk a bit more about hormones and what's going on, when we lack sleep, here's some of the things that happen. We get increased ghrelin. Ghrelin is something, again, a hormone within your body that controls or plays a part in controlling food cravings. And when ghrelin is high, food cravings are high. When you lack sleep, you're going to be sort of suffering from increased food cravings. So, as we said, if you're already following a diet, you're restricting your calories, but you're not sleeping and you're getting these increased food cravings, it's going to be a pretty crappy place to be. You're literally going to spend all day, every day feeling hungry and just feeling like you're depriving yourself of things, and God, this health lark is just, it makes me feel bad, and so on and so forth. It's nothing to do with the healthy eating or reducing your calories. It's largely down to not getting enough sleep, and you're getting this increased ghrelin kick. You're also going to get an increased sense of reward from food, obviously linked in with what we've just talked about. You're going to see reduced leptin. Now, leptin and ghrelin kind of work together as something of a team. Leptin being the hormone that says, I'm full, I've had enough food, and I can put my knife and fork down. Unfortunately, when you're lacking sleep, leptin will be reduced. It gives you this reduced sense of fullness, and that's just going to make food cravings and your desire to stick your head in the fridge is going to be even worse. And the sort of the fourth horseman there, the reduced insulin function. I'm sure you've heard of insulin. It's a hormone that plays a huge part in shuttling nutrients into your cells for use for energy production, amongst other things. So when we're lacking sleep, reduced insulin function, this means we're going to have lower energy. We're not sort of processing what we're eating as well as we should be. And if we're not using it up as energy, then a lot of the food that we're eating is going to end up getting stored as body fat. So just to confirm what we said about a sense of reward from food, there's a great study was done where they had two teams. One team was allowed 9 hours of sleep and then were woken up. One team 4 hours of sleep, and what they found was that the guys that only got 4 hours of sleep had a much greater sense of reward from food. Alright, so obviously 9 hours is really what we want to be getting. Some people say 8 hours, some people 7, but generally the sort of 7 to 9 hour mark. I personally can say that when I've been able to get 9 hours of sleep, much more effective in the gym, much more energy, so I would agree with that 9 hours from a sort of anecdotal point of view. But it's pretty clear that if you're only getting sort of 4 or 5 hours of sleep, then as we said, you're going to get this much greater sense of reward from food, and that is obviously going to encourage you to eat, even when you don't necessarily need the calories from an energy point of view. So from a dietary perspective, if you're only getting sort of 4 hours of good sleep, then you can expect to have problems. You can expect to kind of struggle with any kind of nutrition plan. In terms of, this is more of a sort of indirect effect in a way of a lack of sleep. When we are lacking sleep, there's sort of bits of the brain. Our brain's always firing up and doing all this crazy complex stuff. There's a one part of the brain called the amygdala, and the amygdala is where we, in some ways, it's almost a safety mechanism. It kind of stores our negative memories, our gloomy memories, as a way of so we kind of don't forget things that have happened. So it's almost like a way to stop us going down, doing the same things over and over and over again. If we have sort of negative experiences, if we don't remember these negative experiences, then we can never really avoid them. Be like a sort of goldfish with a 5-second memory that just keeps swimming into the sort of glass of the fish tank. So when we are lacking sleep, the amygdala tends to fire up. So if you're always lacking sleep, that your amygdala is just constantly firing. And as a result, you're going to be a much more negative person. Okay, you're going to constantly recall all the bad things that have happened, the bad ways people have treated you, your bad experiences, and obviously that's going to make life a pretty crappy place to be. You're not really going to have much motivation to exercise and follow nutrition and chase your personal goals and so on. In conjunction with that, there's a part of the brain called the hippocampus, and that kind of does the other thing. It's the more positive part of the brain, and when you're tired, the hippocampus basically doesn't fire. So it's very hard to actually find any positives in life, find any positive reasons to not eat ice cream, to choose a salad instead, to get to the gym and have a bit of a sweat fest. So we often talk about life sort of being an illusion, and I often say to people it really depends on what pair of glasses you're wearing at the time, how you see the world, rather than there actually really being any sort of reality. If we take two identical people, one of them, the only difference being one of them is absolutely knackered and hasn't slept, and one is getting loads of great sleep, those two people are going to see life in a very different way. Alright, so if you are a very negative person, you're always finding fault and people are always annoying you and people are frustrating you and it seems like the world's against you, then the first place I would look is to getting lots of great sleep and doing whatever you can to improve that. So how do we increase growth hormone? Well, deep sleep, obviously we just covered that. Intense exercise as well. Getting that, we often talk about stress as it almost has negative connotations. We need physical stress to actually improve our bodies. We have to put our bodies under stress, but obviously what needs to be the case is that stress is pretty short-lived. We train really hard for 45 minutes, maybe for an hour, and then we go back to sort of normal life, we relax, we chill out, and bring our body back down to earth. But obviously a lot of people don't do that because they're not getting deep sleep, they don't have the energy for intense exercise. It's always sort of a vicious circle. We also need sufficient protein intake, so that's more from a dietary point of view, making sure you're getting enough protein. As a guide, if you aim for about 1.5 to 2 grams of protein for every 1 kilogram of lean body weight you have. Okay, so for instance, if I weigh 100 kilos and I'm 10% body fat, I'll have 90 kilos of lean body mass. 90 times 2 would be about 180 grams of protein. Okay, so I'm a bigger guy. Most people are going to need less than that, but I'd say if you can start with getting sort of 90 grams of protein a day, and 90 to 120 grams is going to be pretty much on the money for most people. Okay, so make sure you get sufficient protein intake and low sugar intake as well. Basically, if you're eating loads and loads of sugar, then growth hormone production tends to be reduced. Alright, so hopefully you are currently following one of my programs, and if you are and you're following the nutrition plan, you will know that two of the key things is reducing sugar intake and eating enough protein. So now you know, well, one of the reasons why it will help with growth hormone, and that will obviously help you improve your body composition. But in terms of this presentation, one of the four key things there is getting enough deep sleep. Now, what else can affect good sleep? Well, the next one is light pollution, and effectively that means when your eyes are being subjected to lots of light and certain types of light, then what can happen is that melatonin production is reduced in your brain. And melatonin is one of these hormones that you may have heard of. It basically helps our brain to slow down. That's probably the best way of explaining it. Your brain slows down, then you're able to get into a deep sleep, and you produce lots of growth hormone, as we said. But if you are constantly exposing your eyes to light, either in the bedroom, maybe you've got some people have street lamps outside, maybe you sleep with a light on, you leave a door open with the hall light on. You've got lots of LEDs around as well. You know, these days we tend to have a TV in the bedroom, maybe a digital alarm clock, which is pretty much next to your face. Even if you have your eyes closed, your eyes are still picking up these light signals. They're very, very, very sensitive. Okay, so if you are being exposed to all this light pollution, then melatonin is going to go down. You're not going to get into deep sleep, and as we said, you're going to end up reducing growth hormone. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about light pollution in a second. So what we want to do is make sure that the bedroom is for sleep and sex. Alright, there shouldn't really be much else going on in there, but unfortunately a lot of people these days, it's go to bed, watch TV. We're kind of maybe still discussing what happened in the day and discussing work. Maybe you're on your laptop doing your emails and things like that. That is where because you're exposing your eyes to so much light and this light pollution, then you can expect your sleep quality to drop. So to get into a deep sleep, we must reach unconsciousness, and that kind of seems pretty obvious. But the truth is that because all this stuff's going on, we're not getting into this deep sleep. We're exposing our eyes to blue light from iPads and iPhones and all this kind of stuff, and laptops. We're stressed as well, so our brains are constantly running over what happened in the day, what should have happened, what you should have done, what you're going to do tomorrow. But you're not getting into that deep sleep. Okay, so we're sort of asleep, but we're not truly sort of unconscious. We're still consciously running things in our head. So how do we improve sleep? Well, we've mentioned certain things already. One of the things is no blue lights 1 hour before. So on the track of light pollution, I mentioned iPads, iPhones, laptops. A lot of these devices that we're using these days they emit what we call a blue light, and it's that blue light that really reduces melatonin production. So do everything you can to turn these light sources off, to stop exposing your eyes to them at least 1 hour before you want to be going to sleep. Okay, otherwise you can expect to maybe get to sleep, but you're not going to get into that deep sleep. Okay, so one of the things you can do there if you want some sort of form of entertainment before bed is to get a Kindle, get into reading instead of reading an actual book, instead of reading Facebook and emails and everything else. Kindles run on what we call a white light, and it doesn't have the same effect on your eyes and your brain. Okay, so no blue lights an hour before. Black out the bedroom. So have a look at your curtains. Can you get better curtains instead of sort of thin? Maybe if you've got sort of thin white curtains that allow light from outside, whether it is a street light or cars as they drive past, you get the sort of light intrusion from that. Do whatever you can to black out your room, black out LEDs. Even if you want your alarm clock there, put a bit of tape or something over the lights. And don't underestimate how much just the tiniest of light can actually affect your brain. Like I said, your eyes are super sensitive. It will still get through your eyelids. So you literally just black out everything you can in your bedroom. Disruptive partner elimination. This is something a lot of people joke about, but from a sleep point of view, and the growth hormone and fat loss and everything else, it can be a massive, massive problem. Okay, so if you sleep in bed with someone who is very restless, maybe they snore lots, then you really need to think about how you can, if you have a spare room, maybe sleeping in different beds, or at least do what you can to get some real high quality earplugs, because it will be affecting you. Even if you think you kind of got used to it. I know I've heard people say this before, where it's like, oh, we've been together for 30 years and I kind of get used to it. Your brain does not get used to being disrupted and hearing loud noises, and it's a natural thing. If something's moving around us when we're asleep, we naturally wake up as a protective mechanism. So that's something you really do need to look at if you're serious about improving your sleep and body composition and everything else. Consider TV and book choices. I've already mentioned about Kindles and the light side of it, but this is also to do with stimulation of the brain from the point of view, if you are maybe watching some thrillers, maybe watching like a crime, a program about sort of crime and stuff that's stimulating you, and you're kind of, oh, what's going to happen next, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. Those programs are as great as they are, and I'm not saying don't watch them ever, but if you're watching them before bed, even though it's not real or anything else, it does activate, it stimulates your brain, and then obviously when you're trying to go to sleep, you're going to be sort of wired and like, yeah, right, that was a sort of really exciting program. So just have a think about what's going into your brain just before you go to bed. Excuse me. Get into a routine. We're looking to restore rhythms. We're looking for, our brain likes to know what's going on. When our brain knows what's going on and it doesn't feel under any kind of threat, it's much more likely to sort of be relaxed around bedtime. So have a think about your routine. Try not to be sort of going to bed too late, getting to bed at sort of 2 in the morning and crazy things like that. Try and get into a rhythm, and the very definition of a rhythm is that you're doing pretty much the same things every night. I know a lot of people like to go, oh yeah, Monday to Friday I'm in bed at 10 o'clock, and then at the weekends they're staying up till 2 or 3. Unfortunately, that can still screw you up pretty badly. Okay, so have a little think about that. Pre-bed relaxation and box breathing. So we said about not doing anything that's too stimulating just before bed, and getting all excited watching certain programs or reading crime thrillers and things like that. Have a look at what are you doing the hour before bed? Are you still reading emails and again stimulating your brain, or can you just sit down, relax, maybe talk to your partner, put some sort of relaxing music on, and just actually chill out and allow your brain to slow down? Another thing I talk about is what I call box breathing, and that is to just take, even if it's 5 minutes, to just slow your breathing down. What I mean by box breathing is that you will either sit or lie down. You can actually do this in bed, and sometimes I tell people to try and do 10 minutes of this in bed, and they think they failed because they don't make 10 minutes, and that's because they've fallen asleep. So, if you are trying to get to sleep, this can be very, very effective. So you're going to sit or lie down, and you're going to breathe in through your nose for a consistent 4-second breath. You're going to hold that breath for 4 seconds. You're then going to exhale for 4 seconds through your mouth, hold your breath again, and then repeat. So it's 4 seconds in, 4-second hold, 4 seconds out, 4-second hold, rinse and repeat. So it's kind of like a box shape with your 4 seconds on each side. Okay, obviously you can build that up to longer. You can maybe go for 8, 8, 8, 8. But some people at first, just doing this for even 3 or 4 seconds can be a challenge. But you'll be amazed if you can get that breath under control, what effect it will have on relaxation and improving your sleep. Supplementation as well. I often recommend magnesium supplementation. Magnesium is kind of like nature's muscle relaxant. It works in conjunction with calcium in your body. Calcium tends to be the one that it helps contract your muscles. Magnesium helps relax. Okay, so magnesium supplementation, just a natural compound, and I've found it very, very helpful with clients of Fitness Camp members in the past. So on the subject of routines, a late routine has actually been found to be better than no routine. Okay, so even if you are getting to bed at 11, 11:30, midnight, try and keep it the same. Sometimes it can actually be worse and throw your body out of line if you're going to bed midnight one night, then you're really tired, so you go to bed at 8 o'clock the next night, then you feel a bit more energized, so you stay up later again. Try and keep it the same every single night. Obviously, you'll have, you go out for a meal and it's 11:30, 12 before you get to bed occasionally. Not a problem, that's life, you still got to have a social life. But in the grand scheme of things, I tend to have a sort of 95% rule. You should be getting to bed at the same time. So generally, 10 to 10:30 should be the latest that you're going to bed. Okay, some people claim to be night owls and everything else, but I've not found many people who, if they can kind of force themselves to get into an earlier routine, they don't see massive benefits. All right, so do whatever you can to get that routine. So coffee, the age-old favourite of many people. I sit on the side of the fence where I don't think coffee and having caffeine isn't necessarily a problem if it's literally like 1 cup a day and as early in the day as possible, maybe to sort of get you going in the morning. But the science is there that caffeine prevents adenosine breakdown and receptor function. Okay, so in a nutshell, basically what adenosine does is it increases serotonin production, and that is another of the hormones that sort of calms us down, and it basically makes us feel happy. Okay, so if we're not producing adenosine, or if we're not sort of absorbing adenosine and using it, then we're not going to get that sort of same serotonin effect. And obviously, if our happy hormones are reduced, we're going to feel more stressed. We're not going to sleep as well, and so on and so forth. Okay, so when we're taking in caffeine, we're preventing this adenosine breakdown. Then what this can all do is it prolongs tiredness in a false manner. That's kind of almost what we want from coffee, or what people are trying to get from coffee. But then it will just give you these urges to have another cup, and we're sort of looking for those hits. It's no different in many ways to a drug. We want that hit. We need that hit to stop feeling tired, and it just becomes a vicious circle. So all in all, basically, high caffeine intake will reduce length and quality of sleep. It will reduce serotonin, and what serotonin also does is it reduces our desire for carbs. Okay, basically because serotonin calms us down, what happens is that basically when we eat carbs, we actually increase serotonin production. Okay, so if serotonin levels are naturally low, then our body it almost remembers that last time we ate carbs, serotonin production was actually increased. So it will stimulate you to go and eat carbs to get that serotonin hit to calm you down. Okay, so as a result, it's going to be a lot harder to adhere to a nutrition plan that's based on sort of low carbohydrates. All right, so in a nutshell, if you're taking in too much caffeine, if you're drinking too much coffee, then you can expect reduced quality of sleep. You can expect to feel more anxious because you've got reduced serotonin, and you can expect to crave carbs more. Okay, so all in all, pretty bad if you're trying to improve your body composition. Habits as well. We talk about habits and how important they are. If coffee is a bit of a habit for you, then sometimes it can be hard to simply say, oh, I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to stop doing that, I'm going to stop drinking coffee. If you look more at replacement, so you're still almost going through the actions of it, so your brain kind of still has that side of the habit, but you're actually replacing it with sort of stuff that's better for you, then it can be much more effective. So rather than just omitting stuff, if you can replace your coffee with, say, green tea in the morning. Green tea does still contain a bit of caffeine, but not in nearly the same amounts. It doesn't have the same effect. And in the afternoon, if you want a hot drink, I like to recommend Tulsi tea. Basically, Tulsi tea is made from holy basil leaves, and there's a compound in holy basil that actually helps reduce the effects of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and gives you all of these sort of stress reactions, anxiety, and everything else. Okay, so the more we can inhibit cortisol, the better. So Cortisol is obviously a good, it's a good thing. We need it. We need stress reactions at certain times of life, when we're faced with genuine danger. But if it's simply from the sort of caffeine hits and everything else, and sort of almost like full psychological stress, is not a good thing. So if we can drink Tulsi tea, it's just one of the little things we can do to help inhibit the effects. So what about carbs then? Obviously, generally I recommend a low carb diet. I'm not saying no carbs, and certainly not doing it all the time. I prefer more of a cyclic approach, which is what I talk about in a lot of my nutrition plans, but we'll sort of park that for now. But in terms of improving sleep, sometimes if your sleep is really, really bad, then actually a lot of people, if they have just a small amount of complex carbohydrates in their evening meal, it can actually help improve your sleep quality, and so in the long run you're more energized and your workouts are better and so on. It can actually increase the likelihood of sticking to a nutrition plan, sticking to a workout plan. So sometimes at first, if you're simply just cleaning up your diet and you're still eating some complex carbs in the evening, you'll still get the fat loss results, you'll improve your sleep. So in the short to medium term, fat loss success can actually be higher, rather than simply talking about all these macronutrients and does it fit your macros and ketosis and ketogenic diets and so on and so forth. Actually having a small amount of complex carbs in the evening may well help. Okay, so it's taking a sort of round the back approach, but in the long term you get much better results. Hopefully with this video, depending where you're watching this, you will have one of my hormone fat gain pathway sheets. This one obviously we're just looking at the causes and then the effects of poor sleep. Okay, so I'm not going to read through it and sort of go through each individual box. Just check that out, pin that up anywhere, just to keep reminding you how important sleep is, and refer back to it if you're still not sleeping very well. Kind of use it as a checklist. You can look and say, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Yeah, I'm doing all of these apart from these two. It's probably the two things that you're missing out, which if you can sort those out, your sleep will magically improve. Okay, so check that out, have a look through it, and kind of have a look at the things that cause poor sleep and the effects of poor sleep, just to remind you about some of the things that we have spoken about. So that is it. That is a whistle-stop tour through the key things which affect your sleep and the effects of poor sleep. I really, really hope you'll actually go away and implement these things, because as with anything I can advise you on and sort of educate you on and pass on knowledge, it is absolutely useless if it's just you're sitting here nodding and saying, yeah, that makes total sense, yeah, that sounds like me, and then you're not going away and doing it. Okay, so please go away, use what you've just learnt, and get some sleep.